I am back with Bliss Bennet, who just read a very spooky sample from Not Quite a Marriage, which is kicking off the Audacious Ladies of Audley series. And one of the things that stood out to me, among many things in that scene, is there are some fantastic names, including Philadelphia and something like Polyhymnia.
Polyhymnia, yes.
Polyhymnia. So can you talk to me about the inspiration for that and then like what research did you put into
Sure.
those names?
Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy because if you read a lot about Regency era names, especially the aristocracy, they're pretty similar, like the same names get used over and over again. But so when Not Quite a Marriage was published, someone on one of the discussion boards at All About Romance actually said, "Oh, I hate this people using contemporary names in historical romance." And I had to say, but wait a minute, I used Debrett's to look up names to find actual historical names that were used in the period. And Philadelphia was a name that appears 4 times, I think, in Debrett's. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I like to make sure that my names are historically accurate to the period. So I have my 1832 copy of Debrett's and love to flip through it and find interesting names.
Oh, that's so cool. And then I loved how like in just that prologue we got such a rich sense of this family. There's the history of the building, there's the history of the ball, there's this throwaway that one of the cousins is being raised as a Quaker, which indicates something very interesting happening in the family being different religious. Can you talk about your process for developing this series? Like what came first for you and how much did you know before you started writing?
Yeah, well, this series actually just started with Delphie's story. I had this idea about a couple that had married very young and not by the choice, and that relationship sort of going off the rails, and the husband running away, and they're apart for 5 years, and then he comes back and he's trying to make good and be a better man. So that's where that started. And then I had the idea of maybe she married the man that her sister was supposed to have married. So I know I'm supposed to not be depressing, but Anna dies in the between the prologue and the start of the story. And so Delphie's father and Spencer's father decide to just replace one daughter with another. And so Delphie is 15 years old and gets married and gets immediately pregnant, has a child, and it's not a secret because it happens, talks about in the first chapter, but the child dies. And Spencer's father is very controlling. So all of those things make him sort of run off the rails. Um, but so I wanted to set up that desire of hers to, like, she feels really bad and guilty. And so then this idea of wishing came to me, and I was researching different wishing games that were popular in the period. So the wish on an eyelash or wish on dandelion, some of the things that we still do today. But the first cuckoo of spring, wish on that was something I hadn't heard before. So then I came up with this idea that Anna was this very dynamic, charismatic kind of older sister figure for Delphie, and Delphie was shy and quiet and felt inferior in a lot of ways. And so that I set up that scene where Anna's the one who's gathering all the cousins together and making them do this wishing game that really gets Delphie to think about what she wants, and then to realize, oh, I'm jealous of Anna, or I want to be like Anna, sort of setting up all of the other girls as well. You don't get what their wishes are, but in every book, there's a prologue that sort of repeats this scene, but from each character's point of view. And there's things that happen to them before the actual wishing takes place that sort of sets up what their wishes might be, what they want out of life. And then, in the way of wishes, maybe you don't want to wish for, because what if it comes
Yeah.
through? That's sort of a sub theme of the series as well, like how
Yeah, I
wishes.
mean that sets up Delphi for such a pathos of she wanted to take her sister's place and then she ended up taking her sister's place
Exactly.
in a
And
terrible way.
in a very terrible way. And then it certainly does not work out, at least for the first part of her marriage to Spencer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can tell I go for the angst rather than the humor.
Well, and also it seems, very clearly centered and grounded in history. And so I'm curious, I think this is something we all have to figure out how to walk for ourselves. Like, how do you think about the line between something that's historically accurate or even historically grounded, like a lot of people died, versus something that's entertaining and escapist for the modern reader.
Yeah, I think that I write what I want to read and what I'm interested in reading, and that's not always what the market wants to read. Because I feel like right now historical is very light and very in the corner of humor and lightness and fun. And I like to read that, but I really prefer angsty stuff. So that's
Mhm.
what I write, and I write historically grounded angsty stuff. And so I think that my books sort of dance on the line between historical romance and historical fiction, because I really, really, really love the research. My spouse says, I think you just write so you can do research. Find out all these cool things about, so I have to find like what building could Audley Priory be modeled after, and what county in England should it be set in, and what kind of things are happening in that county in 1816 when this scene takes place, and then the actual novel starts in 1824. So what's going on then?
Yeah. It stood out to me in your bio that you describe Regency England as politically volatile, because
Yeah,
I know that's true, but I think when readers think of Regency, they think of
yes,
ballrooms.
ballrooms. I mean, the whole term wallpaper romance comes, I think, from that idea that a lot of readers want to read about the pretty things of the period, but it was a really ugly period in a lot of ways, and a period of great change politically and socially. And for me, that's what's most interesting about writing in specifically in the 1820s, which sort of in the middle of anti-slavery movements, in the middle of efforts to widen the vote, to have more people being able to vote. And yeah, so that's what appeals to me about that period. I don't know if it appeals to lots of historical romance readers, but I think it appeals to a good number of them. So,
I think readers are interested when they are invited into the conversation,
yes.
and sometimes it's not what you're looking for in a book if you're really just looking for something frothy and fun.
Mhm.
But I think even then you can get a lot of this in there. And
Mhm.
it also, we're living through a time that's got a lot of upheaval. And
Huge
so
upheavals.
I
Yeah.
always say there's a lot of resonances.
Yes, I agree completely.